like a virgin. Ooh, doing a rapper for the very first time. Like a virgin. So first of all, if you made it past that introduction with my terrible singing voice, then y'all are amazing. And second of all, I'm so excited to be making this video because it's going to be my first ever August wrap up, and I'm so excited to be sitting here and doing this with y'all. So if you are new to my channel, then hi, hello. My name is Cameron. I am a Capricorn. I love long romantic walks to the bookstore. I like chocolate. I'm 20 years old, and yeah, I also like rock music, so that's cool too. Now, if you have never been here before, then welcome to my little corner of booktube. And over here we sip tea and also spill the tea as I talk about some of my favorite reads. So without further ado, let's get into this video, okay? In the month of August, I read a total of 15 books. Let me say that again.
15 books.
For me, that is so amazing. Let's just take a moment to give myself a round of applause because, guys, it's been so long since I've read this many books. And you know, I have a few people to thank. You know, one being quarantine. Like, that has done wonders for my reading TBR list. And then I also want to thank my parents for dealing with me as I literally just stay in my room and hibernate in here like a freaking bear. Who else should I thank? I want to thank the book gods for giving me so many amazing reads this month. It has literally been awesome. So thank you, thank you, thank you. But anyways, so the first book that I read this month was Praying for Rain. So first of all, I just want to say, with everything that's been going on in our world right now, from the Australian wildfires to the coronavirus, and now with Hurricane Laura just like running around saying hi to everybody and joining into the mix, I thought, you know what? If the world is going to end, I might as well be prepared. So I thought the best thing to prepare for the apocalypse would be to read apocalyptic books, because, you know, maybe while I'm enjoying these amazing books, I could also find some good pointers as to what I should do if the world comes to an end. So I do want to share, if you're interested, some of the tips that I learned all from this book. Is number one, always carry a weapon on you, especially if you're a female, because nobody's going to be holding your hand during this apocalypse. And if they are holding your hand, then most likely they want to be holding something else, if you know what I mean. Like
this area.
Yeah, so just be aware of that, because guys like to act like it's opening season on the ladies, and they are not going to be nice about it whenever they take them down. The second tip that I learned is, guys, don't do drugs. Like, I know the world sucks and most likely you will need an escape, but you know, there are other things that you can do besides taking painkillers. You can read books. I mean, obviously you're here because you like to read, so in my opinion, I feel like reading is the best escape. So, you know, read books, don't do drugs. You could pick up a hobby like knitting or sewing. I think that's that's the same thing. So yeah, don't do drugs, you know? Don't do it. The third and final tip that I will give you that I have learned from this book is make sure you have extra ammo on you at all times. And yeah, also make sure that you have a condom or 10, because apparently in this book sex is more important than survival, because our main characters were hopping on each other like bunnies. And it would really suck to make it past the apocalypse and to end up having an STD. So wrap it up. Don't suck it up. Don't get an STD. Yeah, so basically that's what I learned from this book. Let's get into what I actually thought about this book. To give you a little quick synopsis, this book is about a girl named Rain, right there. And in this world, they have 3 days until the world comes to an end. Everyone in this world has been getting nightmares about the world coming to an end. There's the day April 23rd that ends up being in every single dream. So everybody thinks that the world is going to end on April 23rd, and that is only 3 days away. Our girl Rain has had a tough time. She's had a hard go of it. She doesn't have a good family, and basically she's excited for the world ending. She is counting down the days until she doesn't have to feel the way that she's feeling anymore. And in fact, to get through those days, she starts taking drugs and just to feel something other than loneliness and depression. Well, she meets a guy named Wes Parker, who is somebody who does not want to die, and he believes that he has a way to survive the apocalypse, but he needs somebody's help to survive said apocalypse, and Rain ends up being the person that helps him. So what do I have to say about this book? Did I like it? Not really. And the reason why I didn't really like it was because I didn't like the main characters. They both had really bad trauma, and because of that, they acted a certain way. And Rain, because of the depression that she was feeling, she just was looking for somebody to distract her. And it didn't matter who that person was, she just needed some type of distraction. And Wes ended up being that man for her. And she was just very clingy, and she would let him talk to her in any way that he wanted, and she just ate it all up. She loved it. And let me tell you about how Wes treated her. So he has his own baggage, and because of that, he is a literal jerk. He is so rude, and throughout these 3 days that they spend with each other, he's literally just so rude to her, and he talks down to her. He says things that I don't even want to repeat. It's just insufferable. And even though he's acting like that, Rain just absolutely adores him, and I have no idea why. And obviously sexy times ensue between these two characters, and literally by the end of the 3rd day, they are admitting their undying love for each other. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, first of all, they barely know each other. They knew each other for 3 days. Wes was a total jerk to her the whole time, and I did not like it. I guess Rain just felt like because he saw her boobs that love was inevitable. Like I think our girl Rain just needed to take a chill pill, but okay, well, maybe not take a chill pill, because I feel like her idea would be more like taking drugs. So maybe Rain should not take a chill pill, but she should still relax, take a breath, maybe do some yoga. But yeah, so that's what I had to say about this. This book was interesting in the way that I liked the whole apocalyptic element of like what was going on, like them having visions and seeing the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Like, I thought that was really interesting, but other than that, I didn't really like this. I still made it through. I made it through the whole book, but it just, I'm not planning on continuing in the series. So yeah, that was my feelings, my thoughts, and my opinions on Praying for Rain. So the second book that I read was The Queen's Rising by Miss Rebecca Ross. So this book really surprised me, because this is not like the usual books I read. This is a YA book. At no point was there any mention of boobs or butts. And whenever they talked about swords, they weren't referencing any unmentionable bits. they were actually talking about swords. But the reason why this is different is because this is a YA, and most of the time I read very sexy, smutty, paranormal romance books, so this is very different from the usual books I read, but I was not complaining. I really enjoyed this book. So this follows a girl named Brianna who ends up joining the resistance, and their main objective is to try to take down this king who is ruling a country where in the past the throne was only meant for women to be rulers, and yet this king sits on the throne. So she joins the resistance to take him down, and the reason why she is such a key player in the resistance is because she is somehow connected to a relative down the line who had previously passed away, but somehow in this world you can see visions of your old family members, and so she was seeing visions of her relative who happens to have a key influence on the king. So she's seeing all these visions that could somehow help the rebellion to take the king off the throne. I really enjoyed this book. I really felt like this was such a great adventure, and whenever I was reading this, I felt like I was watching The Hobbit, or I was watching Lord of the Rings, something like Tolkien-ish, because the world that's developed here is very thorough, and I really liked the camaraderie that was in this book. Like, family in this book was very important. Another thing that I liked about this was that, you know, there was parts in this book where I cried, and guys, like, I'm somebody who I have watched Game of Thrones. I loved Game of Thrones, and I have seen The Red Wedding. I have seen terrible and horrible things of so many main characters from Game of Thrones just being axed off and killed in so many different ways, and I have just become immune and numb, and just I've accepted the fact that sometimes death happens and sometimes main characters get killed off, but in this book I actually started to cry whenever a character in this novel passed away. Like, I was so sad, and I gotta say that that's something, like, that's really rare for me nowadays. So this book was really special for me, and I would say that you should read it. I'm somebody who I also love romance with my fantasy and my adventures, and there was romance in here, but it played more of a secondary role. So if you're somebody who you want to read books for romance, then maybe I wouldn't exactly recommend this book to you, because the romance was very predictable. Like, I knew what was going to happen between the two characters. I guessed it from the very beginning, but it was still good nonetheless. So I would recommend this book. The third book on my list is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin, or Mahurin. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but we're just gonna go with it, guys. But oh my goodness, I loved this book. Oh my goodness. So Serpent and Dove was everything that I wanted. It had witchcraft and witches, which I have to say, like, that's one of my favorite paranormal groups that we find in our fantasy. So we had witches. We had a very fun romantic element to it. In fact, and when I say that we had a romantic element, I mean that literally this whole book was filled with romance. Like, I will say the romance is definitely part A of the story and of the plot, and then everything after is just secondary and it just happens. So if you're somebody who you don't like romance, maybe don't go for this book. So to give you a quick synopsis of what this book's about, it's about a girl named Louise who is a witch in hiding, because in this world that she lives in, it's very like old Salem in the way that witches are seen as these demon, terrible heathens, and there is basically a group of men, of religious men, who try to make it their mission to take down all of the witches in this world. So our girl Louise, she is in the thick of it. She's living in a city where the where this religious faction of men are very, very, very dominant, and their main headquarters are in this city. So she's very close to these type of men that want to hunt her down at all times of the day. So she ends up getting in a situation where she has to have a fake marriage with one of these said witch hunters. Now, the witch hunters do not know that she is a witch, so she's hiding this whole time, but she ends up having to live in the main headquarters with the priests and all of the witch hunters, and obviously she's living in the same room with her husband, Reed. Reed and Louise freaking hate each other. They can't stand one another, and I was here for it this whole time. I loved reading this book because it was definitely an enemies to lovers, and it gave me everything that I wanted because, guys, let me just tell you, enemies to lovers, like, I rock with that. I love that. So what I also liked about this book is that I really adored our main character, Louise. She kind of reminded me of Selena Sardothian from the Throne of Glass series. So if you like Selena, then you would definitely like her because she's very witty and snarky, and guys, like, she's just like so cool because in this society that she is living in, women are seen as inferior. They are seen as that they should just be housewives, just have children, sit around the house, look good, and yeah, maybe rub the man's feet every now and then, and just do whatever the guy wants them to do. And Louise is not here for that. She is not like that, and she just makes it her whole mission to completely throw those types of idols in the priest's and her husband's face, and she's just the epitome of a wild, freaking epic woman. So I loved Louise so much, and I also really liked the fantasy in this book. I thought that the take that our author had on the witchcraft was really, really cool because in this world there are different types of witches. We have like blood witches, and then we have earth witches, and then we also have other types of witchcraft that was mentioned but just wasn't exactly talked about as much in this book. So I just feel like for the first book in the series, like, this author did such a good job at delivering a non-stop action and romantic book. I loved it, and like, this book has like 600 or how many pages does it have? This book had about 500 pages, and whenever I was finished with this, I wanted there to be more because that is how much I was addicted to it. So yes, that is Serpent and Dove by Miss Shelby Mahiran. The fourth book on my list is Flames of Chaos by Amelia Hutchins. Okay, so this book was absolute trash, but it's the type of trash that you reread instead of recycle. Now, let me tell you right now, I just have to put this out here. This is new adult, and this is also a book by Amelia Hutchins, who is literally known for writing the sexiest, smuttiest books. So if you're somebody who you like a clean romance, then don't read this, because this is definitely more hot than plot in the way that sex is definitely the driving point of this book. So if you're not into that, then definitely don't read this. But anyways, this book is about a girl named Arya who her twin sister ends up going missing, and so she goes back to her hometown where her twin sister was last seen. She instantly meets our main male character, and his name is Knox. And when I say instantly, like, I mean like she's standing on the outskirts of her small town, and this guy immediately makes an entrance by coming by driving in his nice little van or whatever he's driving. I can't remember, but he comes in, and that is where our main two characters meet for the first time. And yeah, so yeah, they meet really early on, and very quickly they start to get to know each other. And I do mean they know every part of each other. So I do want to say that this book, half the time I didn't really like it, and that's because I didn't like how our male character treated our girl Arya. He was a freaking jerk to her, but at the same time, Amelia Hutchins, she just has a way of writing characters where you want to keep on giving them a chance to become a better person. Like, I don't know what it is, but she knows how to write a bad alpha male, and she knows how to make you like it. Even when every part of you hates that person, you still like them. And I liked the romance. I definitely liked the ending because like I said, this is definitely more hot than plot, but the plot was definitely delivered at the end, and there was a big cliffhanger ending where I just already know that in the next book, the book is not just going to be hot, it is going to be filled with a lot of plot, and I can't wait to see what happens next between our two main characters. So yeah, this book was good, and if you like sexy reads, definitely check this book out because Amelia Hutchins, she knows how to write her smut, guys. Like, that's all I can say. It's getting hot in here. Man, that's just what happens whenever I talk about Amelia Hutchins. Okay. The fifth book on my list is Ace of Shades by Armenian Feuds. And oh my goodness, guys, her last name is so accurate because this book was like a finely crafted snack that I could not stop consuming. I ate this book up and then I wanted more afterwards. This gave me a snack, but I wanted an entire freaking feast. So I definitely am looking forward to reading the next book in this series. I already have it, by the way, and I will be talking about the second book in the series in my September TBR announcement. So if you want to see me talk about that book, then definitely check out my September TBR video, which I will be posting later on. So this book is about a girl named In, and her mother goes missing, and the last place that she was seen was in no other than Sin City, Las Vegas. And so our girl In, because she is a epic daughter, she ends up going all the way to Sin City, which is far from where she lives, and it's like a whole nother world from the place that she lives at. And she ends up going down there, and as soon as she gets there in Las Vegas, she goes to find a man named, what's his name? She goes to find a man named Levi Glacier, who her mother, Lords, told her to find if she were to ever go missing and if she were to ever need help. So of course she goes to Las Vegas and she meets Levi Glacier, and our girl is so surprised at what she finds because our man Levi, he is a street lord. He is the boss of a gang that he has, and he is very far from the type of men who she's used to being around. Our girl In was living in a town that is very, very modest, so the women have to be ladies at all time, and out in Sin City it's completely different than what she's used to. And this is a fantasy novel, and it is fantasy in the way that in this world everybody is born with a certain innate gift or talent, and this talent could include being a great dancer, which is what it has a talent for, or you can be somebody who you actually have magic. You can have fire magic, or orb making magic. And it is just very, very interesting how all of these families have these different certain magic or skills that they're born into. And in this world, whichever skill that you have, that is basically what you create a life around. But anyways, so she ends up meeting Levi Glacier, and her whole world is turned upside down. She's not used to being around all of the craziness that she finds in Sin City. She ends up teaming up with Levi, and he agrees to help her try to find her mother. And guys, let me just say, like, I loved this book. I was so here for it because it is just so interesting to see In grow from the young girl that she is to the woman that she becomes. And it's just so cool because she becomes somebody who is very dark, and she's not afraid to do the bad things in order to get the best results. And guys, like, she basically becomes kind of like morally ambiguous, and I like that. Like, I don't know what it is, but I love reading about characters who are not completely good or completely bad. And I was just so satisfied seeing our girl go from this innocent, shy girl to becoming a freaking warrior of a woman who is not afraid to get her hands dirty, or dare I say it, bloody, to get what she needs. And yeah, so this book was really fun. There's a lot of magic, and there's a whole ton of gang activity and secret identities. It was so good. And the romance between our main two characters, I am loving it so far. It is so good. This is definitely a slow burn romance, so if you like that, then you will like this book. So yeah, this is Ace of Shades by Amanda Foodie, and it was the best snack. I literally ate it all up. So yeah, that's this book. The next book that I read is The Hunt by Miss Frost K. Guys, okay, before I read this book, I just had such a strong feeling that I was going to love this, and I was absolutely right. I adored this book. It was so fun. It gave me such a big adventure, and the romance in this book, ooh, it was just something else. And guys, that's crazy for me to say that because in this book, there was no like really big romantic scenes or anything. The romance in this book was definitely not the biggest driving point. While it was significant, it wasn't as important as the other things that were going on. But from what we did get, like that little bit of like spice that was in this book of the romance that was created, it was so good. It was everything that I didn't know I wanted, but I absolutely needed it. And wow, like I totally found a new book boyfriend in this book. So yes, let me stop talking about how much I love this book and actually tell you what this book is about. This is about a girl named Tempest who lost her mom at a young age, so she ends up getting taken in by these people known as the Hounds. And they are basically the protectors and guardians of the king. They protect the kingdom, but they also protect the king as well, and they make sure that nobody can hurt him or do anything badly towards him. So our girl Tempest ends up living with all these men, and they train her to become the next hound. And this is a very big deal here in this kingdom because there has never been a woman hound, and yet here she is, our girl, making history and being a freaking epic warrior as she becomes the next and only female hound. She has just become the hound, and she gets a mission by the king to go out of the kingdom to travel in different cities to try to find and uproot the rebellion that's taking place, because there are people who are not happy with what the king is doing, and it is her job to find the leader of the rebellion and to kill him and then come back to the kingdom. And yeah, that's basically her job. She ends up setting out trying to find this man who is the leader of the rebellion, and it is here where she ends up getting kidnapped and taken by rebel sympathizers, and they end up trying to spend the next few weeks convincing her to join the side of the rebellion and to fight against the king. And guys, one of her captors is a man named Pierre, and guys, I adored Pierre. He definitely ended up as one of my favorite book boyfriends ever. I loved Pierre because he was just a mystery throughout the whole book. He was very dark and moody, and I love myself some dramatic men, and he was definitely very dramatic. He was very theatrical, and he was just somebody who you never knew what you were going to get from him. At one point he would be very, very charming towards our main character, and then at other points he would be unpredictable and just upset and angry, and he was a man, and I appreciated him. And I also loved our main girl, Tempest, because she was just somebody who, she is just a good person, and no matter what's going on, she makes it her mission to try to fight for the side of good. And throughout this book, she's trying to find out who is good and who is bad, and I just really commend her because she stays true to herself. I really liked her, and I loved our two main characters as they got to meet each other and sometimes hate each other, but sometimes maybe fall for each other a bit, you know? But yeah, so I loved this book. Please read it. It was so good, and Frost K is one of my new favorite writers, so yes. After reading The Hunt by Frost K, I just craved Frost K's writing, so I ended up reading another series by her called The Armenian Feuds, and it is a 6-book series, and I read 4 of them. Let me just say, that series is really, really good. It follows a girl named Sage, who is a key player in the rebellion, and she ends up getting kidnapped by the prince of the kingdom that she's trying to rebel against, and he ends up trying to convince her to join his side and to fight with him instead of against him. And guys, I know this sounds a lot like the other book, and I've realized, like, I've looked up, like, she has like about, I think, 3 to 4 different series, and all of them kind of have that same type of enemies to lovers to rebellions and all that type of jazz. Like, that was basically like every book series, except like it had a little twist to each one. But I was here for it, and I just like her style of writing, and it was just really, really good. So the series that I'm talking about, The Armenian Feuds, it was everything that I needed, because I just knew that after reading The Hunt, I needed more of Frost K, because Frost K just has a great style of writing. It's a style that is just very addictive, and once you read one book, you just have to keep on reading it and reading it and reading it, and I literally read these 4 books in about 4 to 5 days. And that is how into it I was. So yeah, but I did end up, by the end of the 4th book, I stopped reading the series, and that's just because I kind of got a little burnt out, because our main girl, Sage, she was going through the craziest storylines, and there was just some very big traumatic things that happened to her, which I just had a hard time swallowing, I had a hard time dealing with, and it really took me through a kind of bit of a depression, because I was just constantly in the head of Sage, and Sage was very, very depressed herself, and it was hard for me to deal with it. So I took a little bit of a break, and I'm kind of on sabbatical right now. I am planning on going back and reading that series and finishing it up, but as of right now, I'm just taking a little bit of a break, and yeah. So the 11th book on my list is Smut by Karina Halley. So I read this book right after reading the Armenian Feuds series, and I told you before that had left me in a really tough place. I was just very, I was in a state of shadowiness. Yeah, like I was in a deep, dark part of my life. Yes, I know I'm dramatic, but I was just very sad, and I needed something to cheer me up, and this book, Smut, it was everything that I needed. It was the cure to my depression. This was basically like if the coronavirus were to have a cure, this was it. This was how important this book was to me, and this was how much I adored it. So this is a new adult book, by the way. As you can tell with like the cover and everything, a lot of sexy times ensues, so that's your warning again. There's a ton of time spent in between the sheets. This book's about a girl named Amanda. She is in college right now, and she is taking a creative writing class. She ends up getting paired with a guy named Blake to write a creative assignment together, and after writing that assignment, they end up realizing that they write really good together, and so they decide to make a go of it and to start writing erotica and smutty novels. And just while they're writing about erotica, naturally they end up wanting to live out those fantasies that they're talking about, so they decide to get together and make words become a reality. So I really liked this book because it was so funny, and I really liked the main two characters, Blake Crawford and Amanda, because this was another enemies to lovers book. They did not like each other at first. In fact, they were both so upset whenever they ended up getting paired together because they just could not stand each other. But as they started writing stories together, they started to warm up to one another, and from there things got very heated. There was a lot of heat in this kitchen, but this was just so fun. Literally the whole time I was reading this book, I was smiling so much. My cheeks were aching, and I was just laughing like a weirdo. I'm sure whenever my sister would walk past my room and she could hear my laughter, she probably thought I was a weirdo, but it's because this book was so good and it had me freaking cackling like a witch as I was reading this, and I just adored it. It was everything that I wanted, everything I needed, and it completely delivered what I was looking for. And I do want to say that this surprised me because this is called Smut, so I thought that the attraction was going to be immediate between our two main characters. I thought that the sex was going to be like from the very beginning to the end, but it was not like that at all. Like, it really took time for these two characters to warm up to each other, and like we really actually got quite a bit of a slow burn romance that was going on between these two characters, and I really like slow burn. So I thought that was very interesting, and it really surprised me. So yeah, that's Smut by Karina Halley. So the 12th book on my list is Ruthless People by J.J. McAvoy. So this is a romantic crime series, and this is about a woman named Melody. She's the secret leader of the Italian mafia, and she ends up marrying a man who she has never met before, and his name is Liam Callahan, and he is about to become the next leader to the Irish Mafia. And they marry to have an alliance so that there won't be any more violence between the two gangs. And guys, this book was really cool because I have read mafia books before, and most of the time our leading ladies are sweet and innocent and so absolutely just dove-like in their purity, and Melody was none of these things. She was an absolute boss, and she did what she wanted, and she did not care who she hurt. She did not care who she killed. She did what was best for her and what was best for her gang. And guys, let's just give a round of applause, because that was something that was so new and just so cool for this type of mafia novel. So this book was definitely another enemies to lovers. Whenever our two main characters meet, they did not like each other. Liam was expecting our main girl to be a sweet and innocent girl like who I was talking about before. He thought that she was going to just be there to warm his bed and to give him kids, and that was it. Like, that's what he thought she was going to be, and that he was going to be the main leader, and he was gonna be the man of the house and the man of the mafia and everything like that. But he was completely thrown for a loop when he met our girl Melody, because she completely surprised him by showing him how ruthless she is. And so they actually ended up not liking each other at first, but of course they ended up falling madly in love with each other. And let me just tell you guys, the one thing that I didn't really like about this book was that I was really enjoying the enemies part before they got to the lovers part, because they were just so like wicked to each other. They were like doing these, they were like pulling pranks on one another, and it was just fun. Like, I was laughing so much whenever I was reading that, and I didn't want them to have any type of peace. I wanted the hijinks to keep on ensuing, but quite early on they ended up hitting the sack together. Hey guys, so sorry for interrupting, but it was at this point in time that God decided to hate me and ended up losing the last 15 minutes of this video that I was making for you. So I thought that I would go ahead and shortly sum up the last 3 books that I read to close out the month of August. And yeah, so going back to what I was saying about the other book about ruthless people, they ended up getting peace like really early on, and because I guess like in this world
sex equals peace.
But like I was saying, I adored whenever they were fighting with each other. I just thought it was so much fun, and it was just making me laugh so much seeing the stunts that they were pulling on one another, because they were both just so immature yet ruthless at the same time. But yeah, they ended up making peace, and the book was still good. I enjoyed it, but I didn't like it as much as I was liking it at the beginning. But yeah, so would I recommend this book? Definitely, because I really enjoyed it, and it was just something that made me laugh and it gave me a smile on my face. And I don't know how, but our 2 characters, they were complete villains. They were so bad. The things that they did was terrible, but somehow the author just had such a charming way of writing them, where even though they were a little evil, I still adored them. So yes, that was Ruthless People. The next book that I want to talk to you about is The Vampire's Debt by Miss Allie Winters. So I don't want to talk about this book too much because I honestly didn't really like it. This book reminded me of a fan fiction of ACOTAR by Sarah J. Maas, where instead of having the Fae in it, they had the vampires, and maybe I would have appreciated it more if the romance was done well, but the romance was terrible. The characters did not have any sense of depth or personality at all, so I just could not root for either of them. Please excuse my nephews. I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and they can be loud sometimes. But I just could not find myself rooting for either of the characters. I didn't care, quite frankly, if they got together or if they didn't. All in all, it just wasn't a book that I liked, and it's not really a book that I would recommend to anybody else. So yeah, that is The Vampire's Debt by Miss Allie Winters. So the 14th book that I read was From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and oh, guys, I freaking adored this book. This is probably my favorite book out of all of the books that I read out of this month. This is also one of the most surprising because whenever I first started reading this, I honestly didn't really like it. I didn't feel like the romance was really well written. I felt like the attraction that our two characters were feeling for each other was very, very forced. And then, like, at the very beginning, there were so many information dumps that I just could not handle it, quite frankly. But, you know, this book has 600 plus pages in it, so I thought, you know what, I love Jennifer L. Armentrout, so I might as well, like, stick it through, read maybe 50 more pages, and maybe the book will turn around. And guys, it really did. I ended up having an all-nighter as I read this book, and it was just so good. It was everything that I wanted, everything that I needed. So to tell you what this book is about a girl named Poppy who is a maiden, and in this society that she's living in, the maiden is somebody who's chosen by the gods, and at 18 they are to ascend, where in this world ascending means to have the powers of the gods and to be immortal and to just be very, very powerful. But since she is the maiden, she has to stay pure and chaste. She has to wear a veil over her face. She cannot talk to anyone. She cannot look at anyone. And she, most importantly, cannot touch anyone. So obviously, our girl Poppy, she's not really happy with her life, and so she tries to experience life in any way that she can. And she ends up, at the very beginning of the story, going to this type of gambling club, and it's here where she meets a man named Hawk, who is a guard, and they end up having a very heated makeout session. Our girl Poppy thought that this would be the only time she ever sees him or talks to him, but her life turns upside down whenever Hawk ends up getting assigned as her royal guard, and it's here where they start forming a tenuous friendship, and that becomes a relationship. And so yes, this is a very big forbidden romance type of book, and I literally ate that up because there are a few things that I love more than a forbidden romance, and Miss Jennifer L. Armentrout completely delivered it. So this book, while it does start out really slow, is definitely worth the wait. And what I really like about this book is that there is so many fantasy elements in this world. There are so many different creatures and different intertwining characters, and Miss Jennifer L. Armentrout, you can tell, just really put a lot of thought and effort whenever she was creating this book and this new world. And guys, let me just say that Hawk, he is just so delicious. I freaking loved him because Hawk is the type of character where he is not good and he is not bad. And I love a bad man, if I do say so myself. And ooh, he is like a fine glass of water on a very, very hot day. And I live in Texas, so it gets very, very hot here. And I would love to drink him all up. That sounds very, very inappropriate. Act like I didn't say that. But anyways, so yes, I'm so excited to be reading the next book in this series. I am going to be reading it this week because I ordered it off of Amazon and I should be getting it on Thursday. So I'm so excited to be reading the next book in this series. So yes, that is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Last book that I read of this month was The Black Witch by Lori Forest. So I know that a lot of people say that they had problems with this book because it had a lot of problematic themes, and while I understand where they're coming from, I do think that this book did a good job at handling said problematic themes and really delivering a very well written book. So this book follows a girl named Lauren Gardner who is a mage, and in this world there are different types of races. We have people who are mages, we have people who are elves and of fey blood, and we have the lupine. Our author made a very, very vast world filled with many different races, and in this book none of the races get along. They are all taught at a very young age to be racist to one another. And our girl, Lauren Gardner, she was actually raised away from all of these different races. She was kept very close to home, and she really gets introduced to this society whenever her uncle allows her to go to a university which is filled with all of the different races and all of these different things that she had never seen before. So what I really liked about this story was that whenever Lauren comes to this university, she's very prejudiced, but as she continues to get to know all of the different races in this book, she starts to form a friendship with all of them, and she realizes that race does not define what type of person you are. And it was just really, really cool to see as the indoctrination that she was born with starts to get broken down as she really starts to view the world with a whole new set of eyes. And guys, I really like this book. There is magic and dragons and so many different characters that are introduced. And another thing that I really, really liked was that the side characters are given such a big depth of personality. All of the characters that are introduced here, the author spends so much time really giving them layers and giving them their own backstory. So I thought that was really interesting. I'm very excited to be reading the next book in this series. And yeah, Lori Foster did a good job at The Black Witch. I really like this book. So yeah, this was the last book that I read of this month. So yeah, you should read it. It's really, really, really good. So that was my August wrap up. I hope that you truly enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, because as soon as you subscribe, you'll be alerted for any time I post new videos. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this. And as always, I hope that you have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.